Okay, and we are live. Welcome to a new episode of All Things Xbox Podcast. Once again, I have Logan with me. Logan, how you doing?
Doing good, man. Just really wish we had a courtroom simulator game now. I have a sudden desire for one.
Yeah, I mean, with all the drama going on today, I had to put it in the title. It is spicy. And, I've said for the past, 30, 40 episodes where I think the whole Activision Blizzard thing is getting a bit boring, but the stuff this past week, it's just way too spicy, and some of it that's came out today is pretty hilarious. But before we get into all the topics, have you been playing anything interesting?
Yes, I've been solely devoted to trying to beat Aliens Dark Descent. And I have to tell you, that game is tough. Um, I'm about halfway through now, I think, and it is brutal. It's one of those strategy games like XCOM where you have to pause and okay, let me, you know, look at my surroundings and try to, hypotheticals like this creature could do this, or I could do this, or I need to find a choke point, or I need to create a turret and have this guy use a shotgun, this guy have a flamethrower, or this person throw a grenade and retreat. And it's like, if you don't do that, it can get quite overwhelming. It's like one where you really need to micromanage it. But I'm loving it. It's awesome.
Yeah, it sounds good, and I've seen a bunch of cinematics on YouTube and Twitter, and it looks like it's very much in line with Aliens. Like they clearly sticking to the source material from the look of it. Um, I think that'll be one of those games where I'll play it on easy because everyone
I don't
mentioned
blame you.
the difficulty in strategy games sometimes can be absolutely brutal. Um, this past week, I've been playing pretty much two games. Cyberpunk 2077. I'm trying to finish the main story before the expansion drops. And I got another game the other day, which cost about, I think it was £1.57 or something. And that's John Wick Hex. And I have to say, it's a fun game, brutally hard. That is also a turn-based strategy game. And, I bought it basically because of it's John Wick, right? I love that world. I'm happy we're going to see more movies in that universe. And there's actually a AAA shooter in development. That's John Wick. And I can't wait to see that. But until then, there's this. And it's really cool. You go through these small stages. And once you've finished, you can actually let it do a replay of your entire room where it's basically cinematic mode. So you just sit back
Oh,
and
that's
watch.
awesome.
Yeah, and it's really cool. But if you mess up a lot like me, the playbacks don't look that good. But hey, it's been pretty cool. But yeah, mainly Cyberpunk. And I have to say, I was talking about Cyberpunk last week, but I have to give it some praise. That game was jumped on a lot for, a year and a half, 2 years. And now it's in an amazing state. It's a quality RPG. The voice acting, the world itself, the graphics even. I play that game and wonder, how is that a cross-gen title? Obviously we know what the issues, but now I'm playing it and it's arguably one of the best looking games out there. Its open world is unlike anything else, and it's just fresh. I think it's weird, that game, because it combines elements of The Witcher and Skyrim, but it works. As I'm playing it, I'm thinking it does feel like a Bethesda RPG in a way. But yeah, did you finish that at all?
I have not. I was about to hop into Cyberpunk, but then Liberty is coming out, and I figured that I'd wait till that came out and jump in because that's going to be kind of a revamp of the whole game system itself. So I was going to wait till that was up.
Yeah, that's probably the best way to go, because up until last week, I thought it was just new content, but they fixing everything. Gunplay is going to be fixed a little. Driving, although I think driving in the motorcycle is fantastic, but cars, the UI, I like the UI in that game. However, when you want to upgrade your character in the skill tree is atrocious in that game. It's easy to understand, but it's more complicated than it needs to be. But hey, you're picking the best time, and I think a lot of people will be jumping in then. And I think at the minute you can still get the game and the expansion at discount. I'm not 100% on that, but hey, anyway, it's a great game. I think more people enjoy it. Now let's get into all the topics. Now, we have a lot more stuff to talk about today than Activision Blizzard stuff, and some funny ones I want to put in as well. So This morning, as I was going through all the news feeds, I saw an article on about how AEW Fight Forever comes out. And bear in mind, I have not watched wrestling since the early 2000s. Like, Stone Cold Steve Austin and The Rock were champions when I used to watch, right? So, like, I dipped out a long time ago. But I've had my eyes on this game because they're developing it to be a lot like the wrestling games that came out in the 2000s or late 90s, like SmackDown on the PlayStation and No Mercy on the 64. And those games are revered to this day. People love talking about those games, and it's like, what, 2023? Like, people are becoming old farts now. At least I feel like it when I talk about these games. But anyway, this wrestling game comes out in 2 days. It looks fantastic. Graphically, it's not the best thing ever. Gameplay-wise, it looks damn good. Well, the reason I'm bringing the game up is that a new mod leaks today in the source files on one of the websites, and it turns out that wrestling game is getting a Battle Royale mode. Now, when I first read that, I kind of rolled my eyes, because I'm at a point now where I'm sick of Battle Royale modes. I think they're forced. I think that's a 2017 thing that's just dragged on too far. It's a thing where most gamers say, oh, it's just another game mode. But we all know that's not the truth. They always its own separate thing. Well, anyway, this thing actually looks damn good. So it's set in a football stadium, an American football stadium, and there's vehicles like which you can get in, drive around, take out other players. You have to pin other opponents, and there's weapons on the field like chairs, baseball bats, all that type of thing. And it looks really good, and there's even like a circle which gets smaller, so it's very much a battle royale thing. Now, I can't post images on Twitter because wrestling companies in general are very vicious when it comes to leaks and stuff. But if you want to search for them on Google or Bing, you can find them, and it looks absolutely nuts. Like, I'm 99% certain I'm going to purchase this game, and apparently the battle royale game mode comes a bit later in a few months. But Logan, like, I know you're not really into wrestling as much as me, or as much as I used to be, but a battle royale mode for a wrestling game does sound nuts.
Yeah, it sounds fun. It kind of sounds like, back in last gen and stuff, and even some this gen, game companies would have like April Fool's Day modes that they'd put into stuff, like with goofy content, like either big head mode or, you're running around as the Easter Bunny or, just random goofy stuff like they would throw in as a gag thing. And this sounds really fun and like one of those, but fully developed for the game. And I think for that alone, I might get the game on a steep sale because, like, I'm not a wrestling guy at all, but the idea of playing that mode for some laughs sounds pretty fun. So it's something I'll check out.
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm not going mental for this game, but I think, when it comes to the wrestling game space, people want more competition, because I've played some of the more recent ones, like 2K19 and all that, and they did not play good. They played awful. Back in the day, the wrestling games were fun, and now they just seem like a bunch of mini games tied together and then called a wrestling game. But hey, more companies making wrestling games, that's great for everyone. I'm sure 2K in the future, they'll get better. But hey, if people have been off wrestling for a long time, like, even though there's not a lot of faces in that game that I can say look familiar, I know Chris Jericho and CM Punk, and that's pretty much it. But outside of that, like, I'm interested because of the gameplay. And even though the graphics aren't top notch, I don't really care. I just want a fun game. Like, hell, if No Mercy from the Nintendo, I can't speak today, Nintendo 64 was ported over to modern consoles and it looked as crap as it did then, I'd still download it and buy it because it played so good. So, hey, if it's good, can't wait. Anyway, we'll move on. We have a lot to go over today. Damn, we have more topics than I thought. Okay, so Star Wars, The Old Republic, the MMO on PC. It came out in, I think, 2011. It's been out a very long time, and it's not on console. Well, it's changing hands, the developer. So BioWare's third team, the MMO team, is no longer making content for it. They're no longer making fixes for it. and it's this other team being bought in. It's still published by EA, and it's like, why am I even talking about this? I'm going to port beg live. So, this MMO has been out for years. There's a growing market on console for MMOs, and I think this is one of the few games that just hasn't made its way over to console. We have Neverwinter Nights on console. There's rumors that we're going to get World of Warcraft at some point on console. Although I think that would also be multi-platform. Star Trek Online is on console. So there's definitely a market for MMOs on the platform. I think there's about 10 or 11 on Xbox right now. And given how big the Star Wars brand is, and given how much people love the Old Republic era, I don't understand how EA haven't tapped into the console market, because it's free to play. You buy the expansions up front, and you buy things like cosmetics, right? So I have no idea why they haven't put it on console. And every time I mention this, by the way, I get one PC-centric person in my replies saying it's impossible to put that on a controller. I say poppycock, because Star Trek Online works on a controller. And if you've played that game, it's super complicated. Whereas Star Wars isn't as complicated. And I'm just port begging live, because there is a market out there for more Star Wars games, and especially a Star Wars MMO. Like, we may never get a Knights of the Old Republic 3 or remake, because that situation is all over the place. But the fact that this MMO is out there, it apparently has an amazing story. I've watched a ton of cutscenes from that game, and it genuinely looks good. And I don't understand why EA just aren't putting it on console. It seems like such a wasted opportunity, especially since there's like 7 full expansions out. There's like 200 hours worth of story, probably more than that actually, and they're not doing anything with it on console. And I feel like I'm taking crazy pills, because they haven't even mentioned it or hinted at it. Like, Logan, I know you want it on console as well, but like, it changing developers, like, do you see any future where this is actually going to come over? Because the game's been out for like 12 years now, and we've heard nothing.
I wouldn't put like a majorly great chance at it of coming over, but the fact that it's changing hands as a new team with more resources, they'll have a fresh look at it. They can reevaluate the market and go, okay, this is how many people are playing it. Where could we potentially take it? Yada, yada, yada. They want to keep it fresh and going and help grow the community, not let it stagnate. So to me, it would make sense to look at consoles. Like, that to me would be a prime example where you could throw a money bag at them and try, like, hey, we would help pay for some of the porting costs to get this to a console. Because if you could have that as an exclusive console MMO, that would be a big deal. Star Wars is a major name in all of entertainment and pop culture, so I think that would be one that would be worth throwing a money bag at.
Yeah, because like, if you look at like the MMO market right now, World of Warcraft is doing its thing. You have Final Fantasy 14 on PlayStation and PC. That's like, that's also huge. And then the third pillar in the big MMOs, I'd say, is Elder Scrolls Online. That they have like over 20 million players now or something. And I just think, like, if they want their fan base to grow and they have this new team with new ideas that could do new things, I'm hoping they bring it up, because the more time passes, the less likely it is it's going to happen. And yes, I'm Paul begging live on a podcast for a PC MMO that's been out for about 12 years, but I don't care. I love Star Wars. I love the Old Republic era, and it just seems like such a wasted opportunity. Anyway, and on with the whole EA stuff, we got an update on Mass Effect 4 and Dragon Age Dreadwolf. Now, Dreadwolf is apparently full on in production, and every time they talk about this, by the way, they reiterate it's 100% single player, because there was a time when that was going to be a live service game. And then all Dragon Age fans around the world cried. But it's single player now, which is great. They confirmed Mass Effect single player, fantastic. But the interesting thing is that they said a lot of valuable developers that have worked on previous titles are working on the new Mass Effect game, which is the big thing, because if you know the whole Andromeda situation and the rumors going into the whole franchise for years, like, Mass Effect was kind of all over the place. Mass Effect 4 was never going to happen up until not long ago. So, like, they are all hands on deck for Mass Effect. They have the best developers at BioWare making the next Mass Effect, which, you know, I may talk about Starfield a lot and Xbox a lot online, obviously Mass Effect, but, like, the next Mass Effect game is my most anticipated game. However, it's the game I'm most terrified of, right? I've said before, that game needs to be perfect. Like, it can't come out. And I'm not even talking about bugs, by the way. I'm talking about setup, story, characters. You know, I don't want an open world game. I want a hub world game. I'm tired of open worlds, and honestly, I like I like open world games, but we don't need them for everything. There's different things we can do, you know. And even though they said it's years away, they have my faith. Like, Logan, you like Mass Effect as well, and Dragon Age. Like, does it give you any confidence whatsoever when they say they have, you know, veteran developers on the title?
Be a little cynical. It helps a little bit, but considering how badly they botched some of their most recent stuff, I'm honestly still a little salty and sketchy about my faith in BioWare. They're not the BioWare that you and I grew up with. They still have the BioWare name, but it's kind of like they've shuffled chairs and house so much that it's hard to tell who's really there, who's really not. Like, okay, they're veterans, but you know, how much do they have experience with this or that? And then a whole bunch of the like figurehead types have left. A few have come back and then left again. It's just, I really, really hope it does well, and I hope that EA, you know, fully supports them and they can get it done, and it's great. I just am I've been burned by them pretty bad. I'm somebody who bought Anthem Legion of Dawn edition. So, BioWare and me, yeah, I'm just I really hope they get this right.
Yeah, you know, I see people bring it up in chat. We will talk about the Activision stuff in a bit because that's going to be a long ass topic. But yeah, I mean, the whole burnout thing, excuse me, the whole burnout thing on BioWare, I get you. I bought I think it was the digital deluxe version or the deluxe version of Anthem, and I was so looking forward to that game. I was in every test, every online test for that game, and I even had plans to do an Anthem-based podcast. Right? You know, when we were told this was a 10-year, you know, title, like, I had major plans. I had art made for an Anthem podcast that I was going to do weekly for years. Obviously, that art's in the trash, but like, I had so much faith in that game, but I never liked the idea of BioWare, a team that make these beloved single-player experiences on a, let's face it, a Destiny clone with less content. So that's basically what that game was. And my online experience for that game was terrible. I was always zipping all over the place. Like, my netcode was crap, even though I had fiber optic at the time. So, yeah, I mean, BioWare, they do have to earn people's trust back, especially with, you know, Andromeda. They put their C team on their biggest IP, which boggles my mind to this day, by the way. Like, they put the multiplayer studio for Mass Effect 3 on Andromeda. Like, I flabbergasted. I have no idea why they were even thinking of that. But yeah, hopefully they knock it out the park. It's funny because I have more faith in EA's single player studios right now than BioWare. So the team that made, you know, the Dead Space remake, and they did Star Wars Squadrons, and aren't they also making the new Iron Man game?
Yes, I believe so.
Yeah.
Motive?
Yeah, Motive. Like, they probably their best studio at the minute, and they've done no wrong.
Respawn's pretty great.
yeah, true. Respawn. I think Respawn would be good on Mass Effect, to be honest. Considering how good their storytelling was in Jedi Survivor, but hell, I'm gonna. It's years away, right? I'm not gonna be, you know, being concerned right now, even though at the back of my head I'm terrified. If it was up to me, I'd have Casey Hudson back. You know, taken 100% control of this, have all the writers back from Mass Effect 2. But, I mean, unfortunately, we don't live in that land where houses are made of chocolate. So, hopefully things will be better. The good thing is that they have the writer from Marvel's Guardians of the Galaxy game. So, that's a massively good thing for the game. But, again, that game's coming out in, like, I'm saying 2026 at the earliest. So, it's a while off. But, hey, I wish them the best. And, yeah, I'm probably going to play Legendary Edition 3 more times before that game comes out anyway. But yeah, we'll move on. You know, we have... I'm trying to think. Okay, I want to talk about Microsoft Awards. Now, every time I talk about Microsoft Awards on Twitter, people get angry for some reason. They get angry because apparently, there's people out there that think that I spend hours each day earning points. Like, that's how I paid for my Starfield controller, right? I had enough points. I had more than enough points to get the controller outright. So, I posted about it. I said, I got this controller because of my points, which I did. I think it came to like 70,000 points or something. And I think it's something all Xbox fans have to do, right? If you can pay for your own Game Pass each month because of points and it's free, why not do it? And every time I talk about it, people say I spend hours a day doing it. They clearly don't know what they're talking about. And, like, it's free money, right? I keep telling people to do this. Like, why would you not do this? I spend maybe 5 minutes each day getting everything done. Like, it's now, 22 minutes past 11 at night. And for today, which is Tuesday, I've already earned about 1,100 points. That's today. Right? So, like, that's £1, basically. And it all adds up. So, like, people can just pay for everything, basically. Like, if you do all your points per, day and per month, you could probably buy a few AAA games a year. Or hardware. Or pay for your... Like, Logan, you pay for your Game Pass subscription as well, out of, the reward points as well, don't you?
I used to. I'm on a different plan for it now, but I use it to buy a bunch of games and DLCs and stuff.
Like, that's a good point. Like, you can spend it on basically anything. And I just find it funny that whenever I bring it up, some people just get angry. And I think, especially with the prices of things going up, which we'll be talking about in a bit, like, if you can save every penny you can towards maybe something else you want, or just anything in general, like, the price of everything's going up, so why not do yourself a little bit of a favor, save up some points, treat yourself. Hell, there's people online that have told me they've spent all their points on, the reels where you can, like, try and win stuff. Like, people have told me they've spent, like, 200,000 points trying to win, like, a laptop or, like, another Series X or S. And all I say is, like, no, save them. Buy stuff, Like, hell, I even told my mother about it, like, a few years ago, and now she does it as well. Like, I've gotten a lot of people to do Microsoft Rewards. And hell, if you set Bing to your automatic search engine on iPhone, like, you're naturally getting points throughout the day anyway, because I use the search engine probably a dozen times a day anyway. So, yeah, just trying to give people some advice. Save up your points. Pay for your Game Pass and all that stuff. And anyway, we have the first super chat of the night by Nick W for $5. Thank you very much. He says, I bought Kelowna 1 and 2 because the points and a bunch of other games. Exactly. You can buy all sorts of games. All sorts of games. Like, I bought Hogwarts Legacy in February or whenever it released because of points. 100% points. And, yeah, it may be a bit of a hit when, you spend like 70,000 points, but, I mean, it's free. It's free. And, yeah, you can buy games. And also, thank you, Nick W, for the $5 super chat. I actually want to buy Kelowna as well. It looks pretty good. Yeah, thank you very much. But yeah, I'm just saying, people should spend the points, earn them. It's a good way to get stuff. And if you think about it, if you start saving from like 2025, you could potentially pay for your entire next-gen console. Think about it. Anyway, we've got a lot of stuff to go over. You don't want to talk about Metal Gear Solid. So the Metal Gear Solid 3 remake was announced at the PlayStation Showcase like almost a month ago, and we got a CGI trailer. Nothing too fancy, but we also got the teaser trailer image for the new Metal Gear Solid Master Collection Volume 1. Now, we finally have all the details of what's actually coming over. The first Metal Gear Solid game, that's right, the PlayStation 1 game, is coming over, which some people were telling me it would never happen. Well, it is. And like I played that game as a kid, amazing. And basically what's happening is we're getting Metal Gear 1 and 2 from, I think it's the SNES version. And then we're getting Metal Gear Revenge, which is from the SNES, I think. It was either SNES or Game Boy. Although I know that Hideo Kojima hates that game and does not consider it canon. But it also includes digital comics, some artwork, soundtracks, that type of thing. But the interesting thing that I thought is that it actually says it has the HD collections for Metal Gear Solid 2 and Metal Gear Solid 3. So if you're like me and you already own the collection from 360, we're basically paying for the same games again outside of Metal Gear Solid 1. Now, I'm still going to get it because, I love Metal Gear. Look, I'm basically going to be paying £44 for a PlayStation 1 game. Like, I've accepted that. I have my original Metal Gear Solid game on the shelf over there from PlayStation 1. Like, I love that title. And I've been wanting to play that on a modern console and a modern Xbox for years now. And I have no problem paying that money. I do hope this, though, even though they are the HD versions and it's listed as Xbox Series optimized, I hope they at least raise the internal resolution to 4K. Because they were 720p on the Xbox 360, and they've done nothing with that since. Logan, they've been all over the place with this announcement, but like I'm buying it. What's your thoughts on the whole? We're getting Metal Gear Solid 1 finally on Xbox, but they are definitely just the regular HD collection versions, which we already have.
It's kind of a mixed bag collection because, like you said, you're getting, you're basically rebuying 2 and 3 again, but you're getting the first one mixed in, which is awesome because it's like 20 years basically since that one's been on a modern console. So I like the idea of being able to have it, but I think it's one I'll probably wait on for a while since I already own the HD collection anyway. I do want to play the first one. And I particularly want to play the fourth one if they get their head on straight and make it happen.
Yeah, I mean, before we talk about the fourth one, which that's going to be really interesting, that first game really makes me think because the first game, or should I say the first collection on 360, you have 1,000 gamer score, right? And that was spread across, I think it was 2 games, and then Peace Walker had its own thing. I'll have to check, but given how Xbox allows different companies to do more achievements than 1,000 now, if it's a collection, I'm wondering that if it's 3 games, do we get 3,000 gamer score? Because having achievements tied to the first game really interests me. Like, I've been putting off replaying the first game for so long because for some reason on PlayStation 3, my DualShock 2 or whatever you call it, you can only use the D-pad while playing Metal Gear Solid, and that D-pad wrecks my thumb. Like, I can't stand that split D-pad on PlayStation. But hopefully, with this version, you're going to be able to use the analog stick. So, hoping for that. And funny enough, on PC, you can only play Metal Gear Solid 2 and 3 with a controller. Which, I mean, I don't know what people will make of that, but weird decision. But you know what PC games are like? They'll mod it within like 5 seconds of the game coming out. But the interesting part of all this is that Metal Gear Solid 4 has been locked to the PlayStation 3 since it released. And it seems like over the past year, we've found out a bunch of details about that game, which no one's known for years. So for years, people have just assumed that it was exclusive to PlayStation because, Sony paid, as you would with that type of exclusive, and it was exclusive just because of the whole Blu-ray thing. Well, it turns out it wasn't exclusively played by Sony, right? And they had a working version for Xbox 360 back in the day. They just didn't go ahead with it because I think someone worked out it would need 9 DVDs to get the whole thing over. And like as someone that played that game has hours of cutscenes. So I maybe can't blame them because I can't imagine what the cost of that would be to ship a 9 DVD set like of a game. That would just cost too much. But anyway, people for years now have said that we'll never see that game on more consoles because of the exclusivity thing and it being on the cell processor. And to that, I say poppycock. That makes no sense because there are other PlayStation 3 games that have been ported to new consoles. You know, God of War 3 remastered. It's a PlayStation 3 game. The Last of Us remastered. PlayStation 3 game. So, like, I don't think it's 100% impossible for that to even happen, right? To, like, just completely write off the game because of the cell. Hell, you have PC modders, like, in emulator people that have got that working on PC. So, there's something obviously there. And anyway, people have gone through a bunch of the web code, and there's a bunch of buttons mentioned on the website that points to Metal Gear Solid 4 and Peace Walker. Now, I've just automatically assumed that Master Collection Volume 2 would be Peace Walker, Portable Ops, and Revengeance. I hope I'm wrong on every bloody level. And it looks like Collection 2 will be Peace Walker, Portable Ops, and Metal Gear Solid 4 on Xbox, which I cannot wait. like again, that's a PlayStation 3 game from 15 years ago or something. And yeah, it looks like it's actually possible that we could be seeing that game come over next year. Logan, I know you haven't played Metal Gear Solid 4. I know a lot of people haven't. But the fact that it might be coming over, like, one, it sounds impossible, but two, it actually looks pretty likely.
Yeah, I'm super stoked. That's the Metal Gear I'm actually looking forward to most playing if it does happen. And like on a side note, like if it's about trying to get coding and trying to figure out hardware and software, I would page Jason Ronald and the BC team. I mean, those guys have become like supreme wizards of emulation and all kinds of things. If anybody could figure out how to get that thing to run on an Xbox, it would be them. So I think it's possible that this game could get running on an Xbox, and it makes me really excited that it looks like it will.
Yeah, I mean, if it wasn't actually possible, I don't know why they'd list them on the website. Like, a very specific page for the Master Collection website, they wouldn't even mention that. So, I have high hopes, but, like, people told me for years Metal Gear Solid 1 would never come over, and it's happening. I just hope. Like, look, I've said before that I think that the remake we're getting for 3 is bare bones, right? The screenshots I've seen, it looks like it's going to be a one-to-one remake with no extra content, but with better gameplay. I'm staking my name on that. I think that's going to be the case. And I was right about the collection, right? They are the HD versions. So I'm hoping I'm right by saying I think it's happening. But yeah. And plus, like, Metal Gear Solid 4 is a weird game, right? Because that game has so much story and cutscenes. Like, people made fun of it when it came out. It has, like, I think the ending cutscene for that game is 2 hours long. Like, it's a long game when it comes to cutscenes. But as a Metal Gear game, I think more people need to play it. And the fact that it's probably going to happen now is kind of amazing. But yeah, I'm just giddy at the minute because I have that game on PlayStation 3. It's sitting like 5 feet away from me right now. And the reason I haven't played it in a while is because my PlayStation 3 is old. I have the slim version. And it's loud, right? It's so loud, I can't even hear the game with headphones on. It's so loud. It's going to take off. So, yeah. My PlayStation 3 is probably going to get boxed away soon. It's been out for 10 years now or something. But, yeah. Anyway, it's probably coming over, which is good news. You know, we have to talk about the price increase before the Activision Blizzard stuff. Before we continue, if you're enjoying the show, please like, share, and subscribe. Hit that bell for notifications. It really helps the channel out when you do that stuff. Super chats are live if you want to support the channel or want anything answered or any of that stuff. So, Now, this past week, we randomly found out that Microsoft is increasing the price of Xbox Live. Sorry, not Xbox Live. Xbox Game Pass Ultimate, and the Xbox Series X in certain territories. Absolute shocker. The UK is affected by that. Now, I just want to say my part in this because we haven't had a show since. The Game Pass price thing doesn't bother me. When it comes to a service, I look at how much I use a service and how much I'm willing to pay for it. So, like, while this past week, people have been losing their minds. In the past 2 years, my Disney Plus has went up £20, right? I haven't seen anyone in the UK crying about the price of Disney Plus. Logan, just wondering, have you seen anyone from the UK complain about Disney Plus's price?
From the UK, no. I haven't seen anybody complain about Disney Plus at all.
Yeah, and that's £20, right, in 2 years. And I look at that and I think, I use Disney Plus every day. I get the value out of it, right? I think now it's like $74.99 or something a year, and I get my money's worth out of it, and I'm willing to pay for that every single year. So when it went up, I was thinking, well, I use it every day. Fair enough. At the minute I'm rewatching 24. And if people haven't watched 24, please do. It's amazing. But like, I'm willing to pay that much because it's good. Now, when they mentioned the price of Game Pass, I didn't actually think about it because it's £1 for the regular Game Pass and £2 for the Game Pass Ultimate. So instead of like $10.99, it's $12.99. And to that, I don't even see a problem with it. They run the service. It's bound to go up eventually. If this was like the Xbox Live Gold situation, which they tried to do like a year ago, where the price increase was like almost half, it was like 50% more or something, that I understand people complaining over. Logan, before we talk about the whole console price thing, what's your thoughts on the whole Game Pass price going up thing?
It's a whole big shrug for me. It's not a big deal. It's like $1 for regular, $2 for Game Pass Ultimate. You know what you get with Game Pass Ultimate. You got Live, you got Cloud, you have PC Game Pass, you've got all that. It was already hands down the best deal in gaming. It going up $2 is it's a big shrug for me. Obviously, would I prefer prices stay static and I get to have this super cheap thing forever and ever at the same price? Yes, of course. Who wants to pay more money when you can pay less money? But, it compared to some other hikes of services recently, or when they tried to, jack the price of gold by itself and everybody was like, "What are you smoking?" And then the next day they're like, "You know what? That was dumb. Our bad." And they got rid of that idea. Like, to me, that was a thing worth raising a fit about. It's no big deal. And then the console, we'll get into that.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, Game Pass price, it's nothing. And like I said, you can pay for it with points. Like, it's free, right? When people say Game Pass is free, you have to think, well, no, it's not. But if you get it with points, yes, it is. Like, I haven't paid for Game Pass in years now. But when it comes to the console, I have to talk about this because they raised the price of the PlayStation in the UK. They did the same with Oculus Rift or whatever it's called now, the MetaQuest. And they raised the price of that in the UK by like £100. Like, something stupid. The price of the PlayStation went up, I think, £30. And in the UK, the Xbox Series X is going up £30. Now, I do not understand this business model of raising prices of tech years after launch. Because remember last generation, or even the 360 generation, where you buy a console, and then over time it does this magical thing. It drops in price over time. And then it continues to drop in price. And then eventually they bring out a Slim, where it's somehow it's the same price, or it's cheaper, or it's the same price and has more storage, right? That's basically what the Xbox 360 Slim did. And, the same thing with the One S, right? The One S was cheaper in the UK. It did more, had better storage, all that stuff. And then this happens, this generation. And I get it. Like, chip manufacturers, it's through the roof for everyone. like I read a few years ago, like when the pandemic started, like all these companies that want chips, like car companies, laptop makers, graphics card, basically anything that needs chips, they are behind years, right? Like I read somewhere that the situation isn't going to be fixed till like 2026. So maybe that's why all these companies like raising the prices of like the Oculus and PlayStation and Xbox. But I think it's just dumb. I think raising the price of hardware years after release is stupid, especially since there's rumors of Pro consoles coming out next year. And remember the Pro consoles last generation where they came out the same price as the consoles we paid for. You know, I think in the UK the One X was the same price as the Xbox One when it launched because that had the Kinect. And, the same with the PlayStation, it launched at its price. So I don't understand this business model. And the funny thing is, the price doesn't go up in the US, right? The biggest market for hardware in the world, the United States, and these companies don't raise the price of the hardware. Like, I don't get it. Logan, I don't agree with the situation, raising the price of hardware. And obviously, I think we all know why they're not going to raise the price of hardware in the US. Like, I think in the US, people are more vocal. In the UK, people have let the price of games go up double over one generation. But, like, Logan, can you imagine if game prices doubled over one generation in the US? Like, people would be bloody vocal.
Yeah, I mean, game sales would plummet, subscriptions would plummet, the value of used games would skyrocket. People would try to look into ways to like game share. There'd be all kinds of subversive methods going on, like if they were to try to pull something like that. So I get why they don't skyrocket the price in the U.S. just like Sony didn't, because it's their tentpole region, like their number one most competitive, or like huge market, huge demographic, huge revenue coming in. They don't want to, ruffle some feathers going on with regulation and other stuff while they're already under a microscope. But it always does look a little, weird when you don't raise the price in one market and you jack it up in other regions. You're like, you're essentially saying these too bad so sad to some of these other markets, or you matter less. Which, I mean, maybe in a cold corporate world of spreadsheets and money and like business risks, maybe that's the case on that kind of front. But it always just feels a little cold and inhuman when they do that.
Yeah, and the whole raising the price thing, like years after launch, I just don't get it. It seems like the weirdest move. And
Product tanking, that's like insane to
yeah,
me.
like this has never happened before, where prices have gone up years later, and I think it's dumb, right? Because people have less money more than ever at the minute. The consoles we have, like, look, what we almost 3 years into the generation, people still say, and this goes towards all consoles, like people say it's been a pretty disappointing generation so far, even though I think this year has been really good and it's going to get better. But like, it's a weird generation. Everything's been delayed. We also know why. But like raising the prices of the consoles, well, almost halfway through the generation, and then people are expecting pro consoles are going to come out at the same price. Like, I'll put this out now. I think if there is quote unquote pro consoles, those things are going to be like £600 or like $700. I'm not even kidding. Like, those things are going to be pricey. And, I'm a big Xbox guy. I cover Xbox. And, like, my friend asked me the other day, he was like, if there was a new Xbox coming out, it's £600, would you buy it? And I said no. Like, no console should cost that much. And I just look at these price hikes going up, and I'm thinking, are people really willing to pay that much for a console? Because when you get a PC, you can do all sorts with it, right? Put as much money you want into it. You can replace parts down the line. You can build that thing for VR, like racing sim games, whatever you want. You can do whatever you want with a PC. A console is a very specific device made for media, gaming. That's it. And I think that raising the price of a console years after the bloody thing released is the worst thing they can do. That goes to Microsoft and PlayStation. Like, it's a dumb decision because I haven't seen Nintendo raise the price. Although the Switch has been the same price in the UK for the past 3 years. So, I mean, but yeah. Obviously we know why the price didn't go up in the US. Like you said, they're not going to hurt the bread and butter country, but I just don't get it. I'd be wondering in chat if Microsoft or Sony would offer a mid-gen refresh next year or the year after, and it was, it played everything you wanted at 60 frames, but there was still a risk of things being 30 because you know what developers like. They want to make the crispiest 4K looking games, but that console was, let's go $650. Would you buy it? Because I honestly think people, as much as people keep talking about 60 frames and that stuff, I think people will not pay that much for a console, especially with the current climate we're in at the minute. Logan, would you buy a console for that much?
I mean, that thing better print gold.
Yeah.
I mean, would I pay that much for a console? Yes. But it would have to be unquestionably like best backwards compatibility, the best, accessories and features, the best ecosystem, best accessibility and being able to, social and stuff, like best features, like as far as frames or visuals, HDR, velocity, like it would have to have all the bells and whistles and then some for me to consider that. And even then, I would be like, you literally just we haven't even maxed out the console we have yet so far. So it would feel like just a we did it just cuz we could kind of thing, not because they need to.
Yeah, we have there's a lot of power in these consoles they can like still squeeze out, and I think it's sad that there's already topics on like channels and stuff and articles like when the next gen consoles are coming out. Like, we're barely into this generation. Remember the first year of the consoles? It felt like there was nothing out. Like, that first year of Xbox Series X and S and PlayStation 5, there was next to nothing out. And now people are already talking about next gen and mid gen refreshes, and just with the whole prices going up thing, it's all over the place. And I always say the comment about £1,000 iPhones. That thing's been popping up for years as well. The difference between an iPhone and something like a console is that you use a mobile phone like hours per day. Like, Logan, I'm assuming you have screen time turned on your phone that lets you know how much you've spent on your phone each day. Like, on my phone, sometimes it'll tell me I've spent 2 hours a day on my phone, right? And then I've tried to get it down, but sometimes it said, "Oh, you've spent 5 hours today on your phone." Thankfully, I don't do that anymore. But like, you obviously use your phone each day more than your console, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Because, you use it not only to make phone calls and to text or to email or, goof around on some games or, browse the news like ESPN or whatever on apps or, just you can use it for so many different things. Like, this is where I guess if I had to give Don Matrick credit for something, the idea of the Xbox One being able to be this hub of everything, it was ahead of its time idea. Like, that would have been more equivalent to kind of the iPhone right now. Like, me, and another thing is when I go get a new iPhone, I can trade mine in and they actually give me what it's bloody worth. They're not giving me $10 for an Xbox Series, an Xbox One X to upgrade to an Xbox Series X. Like, they're not basically like scalping you dry to try to upgrade. So it makes it way more affordable. Yes, the sticker might be shock value at first, but and it's like with some brands of cars, like you can have this brand of car for a long time and it keeps its value, and then you trade it in, and it's like, yeah, I'll put a bunch of miles on it, but it's a good brand and they know that, and I've treated it well and it maintains its value, and I can carry that over quite a bit towards my next one. So to me it's different than how they treat consoles.
Yeah, and like I get a phone on contract. Like the company I'm with, they make it worth it. Obviously you get to keep your old phone as well, or you can trade it in for like cash if you want. So like it's a completely different thing. The phones is something you use every day. In a phone, let's face it, in modern society, is a necessity. You need
Yes.
a mobile phone. Like hell, your phone is a compass, a camera, a music player. It's like it could be a beer drinking thing or a lightsaber if you want. Like an iPhone or an Android phone or whatever is everything. Whereas a console isn't. You don't need a console, and I think that's where it's different. And plus, a console is meant to be like a mass market entertainment device. I don't think £1,000 console or like $700 sounds like a lot for a console, because it is. But when when you get a PC, like you specifically know you are buying a PC or a part of something to get the best out of it, right? So if you want to play a Cyberpunk with the ultra ray tracing or whatever it's got now, like you're gonna put a lot of money into that to play that game like that. Whereas on console, like you could pay, let's say $700 or whatever it might be, and we could still get 30 frames games because developers are still choosing to go, hey, we're going to put everything in 4K, 4K textures, real time global illumination, all that stuff, but it'll be 30. And that's that thing with consoles. So when it comes to these price hikes, I just look at the price hikes and think, like, these mid-gen refreshes are going to be expensive if they happen. Because it's rumored to happen for PlayStation next year. I'd be shocked if Microsoft didn't do one. And, oh, by the way, Logan, did you see the leaked price for the PlayStation Q?
Yeah, what did Microsoft documents say it'd be like below, it'd be like 299 or below, something like that?
Yeah, $299. Like,
Okay.
expensive tech, like that Logitech thing you have. You can literally stream from your console to that, and also play PC games that's streamed as well. So that's like a multi-purpose streaming device. Whereas that is a $300 device where you can only play it while you're sitting next to your console. Like, these things are getting really expensive, and I don't know who these things are aimed at. Again, £700 console, no market for it, in my opinion. But yeah, we'll move on because I've whined about prices of stuff enough this week. But yeah, I don't see a market for a $700 price box, and I don't understand consoles raising the prices of consoles after years. Like, it's 2023 and these consoles aren't getting cheaper. Mind-boggling. Crazy, really, if you think about it. Anyway, you know what? We might as well start getting all the juicy stuff because there's a lot to go over. We have some Square Enix stuff first. So, a new Star Ocean game was announced. Now, this game is called Star Ocean: The Second Story R. It's coming to all platforms except Xbox. And this
Shocked.
shocked. And this is a 2.5D. Basically the whole everyone's doing it at the minute, right? And it looks really cool. It's not coming to Xbox, and again, it makes no bloody sense. I make fun of Square because they cherry pick what titles come over. So we get the third person open world RPG last year. What's it called? The Divine Force, but we don't get the 2.5D game. Like, what gives? I don't understand. So we can get the 3D game with all the voice acting and stuff, but we don't get the pixel game. Like, that is just stupid. Like, what are they thinking? Like, we get Crisis Core Remake, but not the pixel games. Logan, I complain about Square Enix all the time, but this is absolute madness. They're skipping another game, and it's another cherry pick game.
It feels personal at this point. Obviously, you or I don't have access to those kind of information, or haven't, been in rooms to learn from these people or stuff, but it's so weird. The vibes. It's just like, it's almost like, you know what? forget you. We're just gonna port it everywhere. And you know what? Hey, there's an Amazon Fire tablet over there. We'll put it on that too, just cause. And just as a big, whatever. It's so annoying. And, we'll get into the court case later, but the fact that Square got brought up in court about all this exclusive stuff and Sony stuff, it raises more of the maybe them and Xbox just aren't buddies. Maybe it just comes down to it.
Yeah, because in like a recent Phil interview with Giant Bomb, I think it was, like Phil Spencer said, like come on, like Square Enix is just the only publisher at the minute that I just said, nah, we good. like it's all about creating fan bases, and like every day on Twitter now, I see a Yakuza fans like from the like Xbox like fan base and like Persona fans on Xbox now. Like there's people I see daily with friends on Xbox Live with Persona profile pictures, and now it's just like Square Enix just don't want in on that. It's crazy. It really is. Like, and maybe I'm still salty over the fact that we got Crisis Core Reunion and not the remake of 7, but it's just these weird choices where they're going to complain about the sales of all their games going forward like they've done for years, which they're going to. And it just came out the other day that UK box sales copies, and I'll talk about that in a minute, but UK box sales copies of Final Fantasy 16 is down 16%. Sorry, down 20, I think it's like 24% from Final Fantasy 15, which was, surprise, a multi-platform game. And the funny thing is, I was looking back at old numbers, and about 24-25% of the Xbox, I should say Final Fantasy 15 sales back in the day were from Xbox One. So it's about the same that's missing, right? So if that was multi-platform, which it was going to be, it would have sold about the same in the UK. And is anyone really shocked by that a multi-platform game sold more than the, exclusive one? I don't know. I could be wrong. Did it say it was down 76% or down to 76%?
I can't remember. I just remember seeing the quotes that it was down and it was not where they expected it to be. And, lo and behold, when has Square Enix's expectations been reality in the last, I don't know, 3 or 4 years? Like, when has their expectations actually been accurate?
Okay, I've just checked. So Final Fantasy 16 in the UK, launch sales are 74% lower than 15. Now, I've said before that I think box sales in the UK don't really matter anymore. A lot of people like myself moved to digital mostly because my city doesn't have a game store anymore, and the companies that were basically owned game stores were stupid and didn't know how to run a business, so they basically ran them into the ground. So a lot of people either order off Amazon or just buy digitally. So like a lot of fans probably just bought it digitally. I don't think it's going to sell badly. But the funny thing is that we all know, no matter how bad or good it sells, like Square Enix is going to say something like, it didn't meet expectations. They've done that with every title for like the past year, and more so anyway. And like it's because they're making these exclusive deals. We just found out today that Final Fantasy 16 was originally meant to come to Xbox. Again, I'm not shocked, but it is what it is. Square Enix is going to continue to make these deals. We're probably going to see Kingdom Hearts 4 PlayStation exclusive. Like, that's probably going to happen. Logan, have you got anything else to say on the whole Final Fantasy thing before I move on?
No, just that we will be circling back to it when we get to the ABK.
Yeah. I mean, and the thing is, that new Star Ocean game, it looks pretty good. Like, and I'm always for more sci-fi games, but Square Enix, they messing up all the time, and it's a bit sad. Before we move on to all the the ABK stuff, I want to talk about Twitter. this
Oh boy.
whole Activision Blizzard thing and everything that's been going on the past week has made people go absolutely crazy, right? People have came out from under the woodwork. They're making alternate accounts to stalk people. Shocker. They're making people like saying awful things about other people. This isn't like console war stuff anymore. This is people being like extremely personal, wishing awful things on people just because of video games. You know, someone made an account the other day, basically harassed me under every single like tweet and said some pretty awful things. But I mean, it's the internet. I can roll that off. But it's all because of video games, and all because like you've probably seen that post today, right? Where this person was replying to everyone saying, "You want PlayStation to die because you support the the Activision deal." And it's like, it's games, man. Like, chill. Like, people like back in the day in the 90s, the console war was who's better, Mario or Sonic? And now people are vile online about this stuff. People are over the top. They go personal against other people, like, and they can be pretty disgusting about it. And it's been going on for years now. And everything that happens, whether it's big or small, it just brings out another group of people out being vile and stuff in personal. And I hate it. I hate the whole, like, people can make a snarky joke now and then, fair enough. But when people start being personal and making personal insults against people, I draw a line at that. That's just, it's silly. We meant to be having fun with these video games, but there's people that clearly invest too much of their lives to like step back, go outside, touch some grass, but they must just like stay in all day, and that's all they do. The console war has consumed them to the point where they don't know where reality begins and this online bullshit ends, basically. Because it's ridiculous. Like, Logan, you've probably seen some of that crazy stuff today.
Yeah, I dealt with some of that the other day about my post. Basically, IGN had one of those pieces out there about Clockwork Revolution and like, oh, look how similar it is to BioShock Infinite and this kind of stuff. And then I had a post about like, no, they didn't create that genre, right? And they didn't trademark it. You know, you can have games with gears and mechs and, steampunk and crazy leaders and blimps and all this other stuff. Like, they don't own that. Like, you can have games with those things. And it's like, it's frankly kind of insulting for like the leaders of, if you know who's in charge of In Exile and like especially the people on this game. Like, they're people who did Arcanium, which came out in like the early 2000s, and then the creator of Fallout, all this other stuff. Like, suggests that these guys who are industry legends and really good are creatively bankrupt enough to try to just go, oh, that game looks cool. No, I mean, come on. And then there's whole like got a bunch of nastiness about that, and then kind of ties to a previous point we had about console gens and price. But basically, I know people are tired of the pandemic, but basically the world lost 2 years. Like, you can say, careers or social life, gaming, business, all kinds of things. Like, basically there was a 2 year pause on a whole bunch of crap. A whole bunch of people were inside and pent up, and things festered, and it just feels like people are way nastier now than they were before. And I don't know if it's 100% a correlation, but it's interesting. And this case in particular has just really highlighted it. And these people are just so dadgum scared and silly about the idea of Sony not being number one, even though they would still be number one market wise right now, even if this deal goes through, which it should. But, like, the fact that they want everything to stay the same, but they want Xbox to do better, but not too much better, otherwise it does this or that. And then they go on these crazy tactics, and it's just, it's insanity at the end of the day.
Yeah, before we continue, we've got another super chat by Nick W. Thank you very much for the $2. He says, no one should want PS or Xbox to die. I mean, you're right. People joke online all the time about, oh, this company's like going to get one over on the other. Like, Xbox is going to buy Sega, which we're going to be talking about in a bit, or like, Sony will buy Square Enix to screw over the other company. But like, if you take away one of those two corporations, console makers, like the whole gaming space is going to fall into chaos, in my opinion. Microsoft, they've been extremely experimental with their first party games at the minute, which is what people have been wanting for years. It's what they do best at the minute, in my opinion. And Sony, they have very focused, like, third person action adventure games, which their fan base likes. But if you remove one of those two, like, the other company could raise prices to whatever the hell they want. There would be no competition or innovation in the gaming space. And like, look at Game Pass, right? If Game Pass didn't exist, PlayStation Now, or whatever it's called now, would try to improve, and vice versa. Like, would Game Pass be a thing if PlayStation Network Plus or whatever it's called ever existed? Like, we don't know. Like, competition's healthy for everyone, and we all benefit from it at the end of the day. And like, look back at the Xbox One generation. Like, Sony, they hit back. The PlayStation 3 had a horrible launch. People made jokes that console didn't have games for years, and then they took the opportunity and chance when the Xbox One was announced to basically stick a knife in, and they did what they had to do, and they completely switched the whole console cycle. The Xbox 360 was the de facto game console that generation. Whether people want to bring up the end sales numbers or not, the Xbox was the console to talk about. Whereas the generation after that, Sony somehow flipped it, right? The PlayStation was the console to have, and that was the console that was talked about. But yeah, we need competition. Like, imagine if Nintendo left the gaming space. Like, no one else would be making a kart racer that's worth playing. No one else would be making an Animal Crossing or a Zelda that people love the way they do. Mario is basically the only 3D platformer that's like that out at the minute. So, like, we need all three to do their own thing, and we all benefit from it. But yeah, you're right, Nick W. And again, thank you for the super chat. But yeah, when it comes to that whole... Oh, by the way, Logan, when you posted that tweet about the In Exile game, Clockwork Revolution, against bloody BioShock Infinite, did you notice how they cut together that trailer so it looked frame for frame exactly the same?
Oh yeah, it was very interesting.
Yeah, like, if you try and make something look like something, it's gonna work. Like, no matter how hard you can try and dig for something, you'll always find something. And they cut together a trailer, their own version of a BioShock Infinite trailer, to match frame for frame so it would look the same. And that was extremely disingenuous, by the way. They didn't even label it as, edited trailer. They just took random screen grabs. I hate the fact that we have to, IGN and just people in general are generalizing content now. So everything steampunk is BioShock Infinite, right? Steampunk was invented by BioShock Infinite, apparently. Just like how Cyberpunk is apparently Cyberpunk 2077. Every time I bloody mention Cyberpunk, people say, but I don't like that game. It's a subgenre, man. Right? Just like steampunk, it's a subgenre of sci-fi. And yeah, that was a crappy thing of IGN to do. Like, brand new game announced by a studio that's been around for such a long time with some industry veterans, and then they get compared to BioShock, where the only thing that's in common is that it's somewhat steampunk and you have guns. That's it. But yeah, IGN are really professional. And yeah, Twitter this past week has been a hellhole. Should we expect any different from Twitter? I don't know. But yeah, we'll move on. We've got a lot to talk about. Before we talk about all the Activision stuff, if you enjoy the channel, we're about an hour and 8 minutes in. Please like, share, and subscribe. Hit that bell for notifications. Super chats are live if you want to support the channel and all that stuff. Logan, we've had an absolute clown show this week with the whole ABK deal. And it looks like things are finally getting near the end. But this past week, we've had nothing but non-stop spicy takes and quotes from industry veterans. And it's it's batshit crazy. I'll be honest. Logan, this whole legal stuff's your forte. What the hell's been going on?
Well, I mean, I could almost sum it up in one sentence in all caps. Do not mess with Microsoft lawyers. They are terrifying. I mean, especially Beth. My goodness. She just absolutely eviscerated this poor guy. It's been just, it's awe-inspiring and just like mind-boggling, the league's difference in the lawyers and legal knowledge and expertise and everything between the sides. Like, you have the FTC having to be taught what an acquisition is and how it works when they're the Federal Trade Commission. This is your job. Like, what? Like, come on now. And then then you have economists who come up with this crazy convoluted, like, basically looks like from Always Sunny in Philadelphia, like, meme of a board that makes no sense whatsoever for a economic model that conveniently doesn't have certain data, or, oh yeah, I didn't actually read that. It's like, and then like, oh, that was just an arbitrary number thrown in, or, and it's just, even their own witnesses. It's like why I tweeted out the Anakin, you turned her against me gif from episode 3. It's like Microsoft has basically, like, twisted around and used the FTC's lawyers or witnesses against them. Basically, almost all the witnesses in the end have been Microsoft witnesses. It's like, you don't want to get overconfident and be, like Oberyn Martell, and you're an inch away from finishing off the mountain, and then you turn around and do a little dance, and he gets up, and you're dead. So you don't want to do that, but it's gone about as great as you could possibly hope for.
Yeah, they've been all over the place. So we have like 50 things to go over what's been said the past week, but I want to read out this excerpt from what happened today because it is amazing. Like, Jim Ryan a year ago said that, PlayStation may not survive without Call of Duty. That was like all the websites were reporting that, like, PlayStation might not be a thing if this deal goes through, making it seem like, if Xbox just owning Call of Duty means that, Sony won't exist anymore. I had to read this because they've gone back and forth, and Jim Ryan's lied through his teeth for the past year, and I hope other people in the industry, and I hope all these websites actually report this, because if the shoe is on the other foot, oh my god. But anyway, I'll read this excerpt from what happened. So, Microsoft lawyer. Do you think it would be better if Microsoft kept Activision games on PlayStations? Ryan. Yes, I do. Microsoft lawyer. So, do you believe it's in Microsoft's best interests to make Activision games available on multiple platforms? Ryan. No, I don't agree with that. And I'm already scratching my head. Microsoft lawyer. So, if you were running Xbox, would you recommend making Call of Duty and other Activision games exclusive to Xbox and PC? Ryan. That's a hypothetical question, and I don't wish to answer that.
We know the answer to that.
Yeah, we know the answer to that. Microsoft lawyer. So you don't get to answer. Ryan, I don't have enough knowledge to answer the question. The circus is open, and the animals are loose. Like, after everything that's been said over the past, and we all know, right? We all know that if PlayStation had the same capital as Microsoft, and the shoe was on the other foot, every title would be exclusive. We all know that. And Ryan didn't want to say it. And by the way, when all this is all done, I don't think Xbox players benefit in the short term. I don't think in the long term it hurts PlayStation. I think in the long term for both. Long term for Microsoft, they end up making more money. Long term for PlayStation, nothing really happens, right? Everything stays the same. But seeing this clown show over the past week especially is amazing. It turns out that you obviously saw this today, Logan, that from the start, ever since Microsoft came up with Xbox, Sony have been trying from the beginning to push Microsoft out of the market altogether. And does that really surprise people? They pushed Sega out of the market. Sega doesn't even have a bloody console now. Like, remember back in the day, Logan, where, like, no matter when Sony would release a game, it would be around a Dreamcast title. And everything was, like, hedged because Nintendo's safe. Nintendo's always been, like, viewed as safe. But, like, Sony pushed out Sega back in the day. We all had to sit back as kids and let it happen. And it happened. And it's painfully obvious that they've been trying to do that with Microsoft, right?
Yeah, it's painfully obvious that's what they're trying to do. I mean, that's Jim Ryan's MO. Like, you go back to the founding of PlayStation, and like Final Fantasy used to be heavily associated with Nintendo, like the NES and the Super Nintendo, and then PlayStation got that to where it's associated with their brand. And then, they bought one of the biggest publishers at that time. And they, would get, Lara Croft associated with Tomb Raider for a long time with PlayStation. Crash Bandicoot, Spyro the Dragon, like all these that weren't technically owned by them at that time, but everybody just assumed it was with PlayStation. They would go for the kill all the time. They're like that heavyweight fighter that's always going for a knockout punch. And sometimes they miss, but they're always hunting for that kill shot. And it's a very different strategy from some other companies. And so it's just really funny to run around in circles and not want to admit that, yeah, if I had $70 billion, I could call up my boss in Japan and say, hey, can I borrow $70 billion and put Microsoft out? He would do it. It's funny. I don't know. It's a whole bunch of running around in circles and not wanting to sit with a straight face and give the answer everybody knows.
Yeah, I mean, look back in the 90s when the Sega Saturn was announced. Like, PlayStation, they announced straight away that their console cost, I think it was like $100 cheaper or something. Like, the clip's online, people can watch it. Like, they tried to push Sega out at the beginning. It worked, right? They, remember Tomb Raider? Tomb Raider was multi-platform, and then the second one was exclusive to PlayStation. Final Fantasy, that was a weird situation, but like Nintendo, like you said, Nintendo was the Final Fantasy console, the Final Fantasy platform, and now it's de facto PlayStation. Same with a bunch of titles. PlayStation, like, people don't like to pretend it happened, but PlayStation bought their way into the market. Like, it happened. You can see videos online of them admitting to it. Like, they had to buy games up front because they didn't have the studios, so they bought exclusivity for a bunch of titles. That's why you even had things like Grand Theft Auto coming to Xbox later on, with the Vice City, GTA 3, and San Andreas. Right, it happened. And unfortunately, they viewed as the darling of the industry rather than there being equal viewing of each corporation. But like, look back at the past few years, right? Sony's been paying for exclusivity for Final Fantasy games, right? Now, I want people to really pay attention to what I'm about to say, because if you think about it, it's kind of mind-blowing. Sony's been paying for exclusivity, so for Final Fantasy VII, a household name from the 90s to this day, and it gets a remake, right? And it looks amazing, all that stuff, right? And it's not on Xbox. They pay to keep the brand basically off Xbox. And then Sony went out of their way to try and get exclusivity for major Western RPGs, that being Starfield and Elder Scrolls. Now, really think about it. If they got that exclusivity deal, Microsoft wouldn't have any of the major JRPGs or Western RPGs on their console. That would have pushed, like, if Microsoft didn't buy, like, Bethesda, I honestly think it would really hurt Microsoft, because they wouldn't be getting the big RPGs. And they tried and failed, but apparently when Microsoft first heard about the whole deal, the exclusivity deal between Starfield and, PlayStation, Microsoft bought Bethesda. And can you really blame them? I wouldn't, because like, Microsoft last generation, they were so close to ending the console, right? They were so they were so close to like Xbox not being a thing anymore, right? Phil Spencer was able to, savor it, but like that would have really hurt them, and them not getting the main JRPG and Western RPGs, it would have ended Xbox. Like, imagine if like the deal never happened, and Starfield was exclusive to PlayStation, right? And Elder Scrolls down the line is exclusive to PlayStation. What would release this year on Xbox? Nothing. Just Forza.
Yeah, it'd be bad.
Yeah, it would have been bad. And for however long it'll go on for, people say we can't give Microsoft credit for Starfield or whatever, but we blame them for Redfall, remember? So which one is it? But like the deal shows that Microsoft, obviously they're willing to pay for content, but Sony, like if you go back to the 90s, right? If anyone here is old enough, like even if you're just a kid like me in the 90s, right? You remember how like everything in your house, electrical, had to be a Sony thing, right? If you had a TV, it had to be a Sony television. If you had a stereo, it had to be a Sony stereo. Like everything, like Logan, it was like that in the US, right? Where everyone's like best electrical was a Sony product.
Yeah, Sony or Panasonic or Bose. Yeah, it was like, your TV, your Walkman, your back when we had Walkman instead of, iPhones and stuff. And, your stereos, your all your electronic devices, they were your go-to.
Yeah, like my CD player was a Sony product. My brother had a mini disc player. That was a Sony product. Like everything that people had or wanted, like you said, was Sony or Panasonic. And they had a lot of money in the 90s, and they were just throwing it all over the place. So Microsoft now, they are clearly all in on gaming. They are putting their mouth or money where whatever. I'm going to mess up that saying. They putting money
I
where,
get you.
yeah, they putting money where they need to. And basically, a list came out yesterday, multiple lists of studios Microsoft's looking at that they wanted to purchase and may purchase. Now, that was the really spicy thing, in my opinion, because there's some interesting names in that list. Logan, do you want to talk about the whole thing that happened with Sega? Because that crap was wild.
Yeah, it kind of confirms some, tea leave reading and stuff some folks had been doing about like, Xbox and Sega seem to be getting pretty tight lately, or oh, they're spending a lot of time in Japan, or oh, this would sure help with their Japanese presence, or have family friendly content, mobile, all this stuff. And they said that they were going to hunt big fish and that they weren't done, that they were going to keep going and buying. And they've even said since the ABK deal was announced that they're not done either. Like, assuming this goes through, they're still wanting more because Game Pass is the mighty dragon that never sleeps. It hungers. It needs more content all the time. So they're gonna keep feeding that dragon. So yeah, like Sega was obviously a huge one on there and would make myself. I'm sure it would make you happy. It would make a whole bunch of people from that era very happy from all the nostalgia and classic IPs they have locked away. And then, Atlas games, all this other stuff. And a note was that they said that they would keep it multi platform. So they would treat it very much like as is, just make sure that nothing is skipping Xbox basically. It would just be, an investment and everything comes to Xbox and we get some more money in our pocket for stuff and expand our brand. It would have been a great choice. And it even got to the point where he had emails with even higher than him at Microsoft about, hey, let's formalize our plan to acquire them and go talk to them and get this done. But then the ABK thing happened. So it literally looks like the ABK thing just fell out of the sky in their lap. And that they had no plans to do that whatsoever. And they had some other stuff lined up. But when you can get everything you need in one package and you are one of the few multi-trillion dollar companies in the world and you can afford $70 just cuz, then you got to take that chance.
Yeah, I've got the list of publishers here that they were mainly looking at, and they've got 505 Games, Annapurna Interactive, Devolver Digital, Focus Home Interactive. By the way, I hope everyone leaves Focus Home Interactive alone. They don't own studios. I know they have a Media Indie Exchange, Paradox Interactive, Raw Fury, Sega, which is the big one, and Team 17. But like the fact that some of these could still happen, like oof, like
Not a single bad publisher on that list. They're
yeah,
all very good.
yeah, like I think obviously Sega's the big one. 505 would be a cool one. Again, I'll say this for eternity: Focus Home Interactive or Focus Entertainment. I love that publisher. They are probably going to be my favorite third-party publisher this generation. They don't own studios. They literally publish games for other companies. So, like, that seems weird to me. But anyway, Sega, that would be the big one because you pretty much secure every single Sega and Atlas game in Game Pass. Like every Yakuza game going forward, Persona and Yakuza would be indefinitely on the platform. That's something you wouldn't have to worry about. Shin Megami Tensei, that would be on the platform as well. So, like, I think but look, we Xbox fans at the end of the day. I think a lot of people on the Xbox side have always been fans of Sega and would love that to happen. Like, it just seems like such a natural fit because they've worked together since the Dreamcast. Because you could get Microsoft. I can't remember. It was Windows. Yeah, you could get Windows on the Dreamcast back then, and all that stuff. And like, basically, the biggest third-party games on the original Xbox were, in fact, Sega games. So, I mean, that wouldn't surprise me. But there's a bunch of developers here. I've got a list of like 50 developers, and some of them are big. Some of which would seem obvious. So you have Asobo, right? They seem like the most obvious studio because they can make flight sim, they can make third person like action adventure games. So yeah, that makes sense. You have Avalanche Studios, which again they make sense. They made Rage and all that stuff. Bohemia Interactive. You have Bungie. Obviously, that's not happening now. CD Projekt Red. Like, as a fan of their games, can you imagine the reaction?
Yeah, him and Larian, like you could have the Infinity Gauntlet complete of RPG studios if you could do that. It would be insane.
Yeah, I mean, they clearly aimed at like all sorts of different types of games, but like there's a heavy emphasis on RPGs. Crytek's listed, Deck 13, Drinkbox Studios, Dovetail Games, Ember Labs, and this one surprised me, From Software. Like,
Oh, the salt would be astronomical.
like I love From Software. Like, Elden Ring is one of the 10 out of 10 games I've ever gave, right? It's a masterpiece. It's incredible. If they got them to make exclusive games, like, I can't imagine. Like, you'd have potentially Elden Ring 2 as an exclusive. Again, small possibility, but that's just wild that that's a possibility. Let's see. We have Gearbox Software, which is quite surprising because they're owned by Embracer now. Harmonix, Hazelight Studios, they made It Takes Two and No Way Out. Heart Machine, Hello Games, the No Man's Sky developer. High Res Studios, IO Interactive, which is the one, by the way, I've been pushing them to get IO Interactive for like 3 years. Like, get the Hitman developer. They're making a James Bond game. They're also making Project Dragon, which is the big thing. Now, we heard about this about a year ago. I think Jez from Windows Central broke the story. They're making a online RPG from Microsoft, and it's about dragons. That's all we know. And honestly, I love the sound of it. Like, I'm up for an RPG with dragons, and if it's online, it could be pretty cool. And by the way, people freaked out when they heard about the online stuff. Hitman is technically classed as an online game, so I wouldn't read too much into that. But yeah, they have level 5 games like Munfish. That one surprised me more than anything. Like, Munfish made Atomic Heart. I never thought in a million years they'd try and purchase them. But yeah, just all sorts of studios. Studio MDHR, the Cuphead team. Just Tiny Build, which, again... But yeah, no Squanch games, which is kind of sad. I love them. But yeah, Logan, like that's a pretty impressive list, and the fact that they said they're still going to grow. Like, do you actually see any of these happening?
Yeah, I would caution and say that the list was constructed in 2021. So obviously it's been a couple years. So some things have changed with some of those. I know House Marquee was actually on their list, and they're obviously a Sony studio now. Bungie was on there, even though the owners denied having talks with Microsoft. Lo and behold, they were for sale with and talked with Microsoft. And then, so they're not an option. I think, Niantic is a really interesting one, especially from the mobile aspect, because, they're known for Pokemon Go and some other stuff. Like, you could totally imagine them with all the Xbox IPs at their disposal. They could make some pretty crazy stuff. Like, they seem like they would be a smart get. Super Giant Games really got my attention when seeing that on their list, because that tells me like they're not only looking for size, they're looking for quality. Like, that's a studio that pumps out incredible, highly regarded, highly rated, very consumer loved games like Transistor and Hades and Bastion. Like, Supergiant would be an incredible get. And the fact that, Mudfish was on there is interesting. I don't know, with all the stuff going on in the world, if that one would be
Yeah.
realistic right now, but it's interesting they're on the list. And there's, like, I liked it mainly that there was a mix of small studios who do good quality and then big studios who do, huge games. And then just a nice mix. It shows they have their head on straight and they're casting a wide net and really looking into hard facts.
Yeah, and I just noticed that Remedy Entertainment's on that list. Like,
Oh man, they'd be a dream.
yeah, and like I think a lot of people have been saying this for years. Like Microsoft, they've got a lot of bases covered when it comes to their titles. They've got like first person RPGs, third person RPGs with Fable, first person shooters, third person shooters, racing games. Like we can all say they have a lot of bases covered, but they need more third person action adventure games and more third person games in general. And like that's what Remedy does. Like they would be such a great fit. Um, they are one of my favorite studios. I hope it happens. But like this court case is like there's a lot of juicy stuff coming out of it. And another thing that came out is that Jim Ryan said today that Game Pass devalues games. Now that doesn't make any sense because every time there's a major third party game releasing in Game Pass day one, you have people raging saying, "Oh, I buy my games" and all this stuff. But have you noticed that if a title launches day one in PlayStation Plus, nobody bats an eye? Like it's completely fine. Nobody has any problem with it. Everyone's fine with it.
Yeah, it's very much the elitist kind of snobby boutique experience that PlayStation is trying to cultivate, and you have to give it to them. They have really got their fans wrapped around their finger with their mentality on, we are the best, we are the premium experience, everyone else is a peasant, kiss the ring. Very much that mentality and that attitude. And that's why they're scared senseless about Xbox potentially, getting on their level or even above with quality or content. Like, they try to go like, well, see, it would detract. We're like a 5-star restaurant. You pay a premium price to come in. We wine and dine you. It's like this, and like they try to make it sound like Game Pass is just like an all-you-can-eat like discount buffet of just meh gas station type food, which is not true at all. And there have been independent studios and others that have come out and said Game Pass helped our game immensely get an audience and has led to sales. So the fact that he said it's unanimous is already proven incorrect when you have publishers and studios saying, you know what? Game Pass was awesome for us and we want our catalog on there going forward.
Yeah, like I've spoke to multiple developers and they've told me that they've had more sales because of Game Pass, right? So like them coming out and saying that makes no sense, and like you're saying, it doesn't help that like Sony has gained this cult-like following over the years, and this goes all the way to professionals in the like journalism space. Like
Yep.
no matter what PlayStation does, they've been around longer than Xbox, but like it's like something happened in the 90s, right, where a lot of these journalists are in their mid 30s, early 40s, where they grew up with PlayStation, right? Their love was for PlayStation, and they've kept that preference since. It hasn't changed at all, right? And even people in like the 20s and stuff, this is the same thing, and you can see it. You can see it in their writing how they talk about these things. Like it's okay for it's okay for Sony to have exclusives, but not okay when Xbox does it. Whenever Sony buys a studio, people say it's organic and it was natural and they curated it, right? Whenever Microsoft does that, people don't act the same. They bought Bethesda and they work with them the most over the years. People say it isn't organic. Then you have Sony. They buy the Halo creator, Bungie, and then that's called organic. I hate to say it, but like there's a large chunk of the fan base and journalists on the PlayStation side that are cult-like. They think PlayStation could do no wrong, and like the fact that they basically said like they lied about Game Pass, saying developers don't like it. I've never heard any developers say anything bad about Game Pass other than that Paradox Interactive dude, which went off his nut one time, but like absolutely crazy. It makes no sense. And I think it was the creative director today for Star Wars Jedi Survivor came out and said like you wouldn't have a game developer make a worse version of a product for a console just because of a marketing deal or them being owned by them. And that's right. I've been telling people this for years. Like Sony has in the past paid for parity, as we've seen with Call of Duty, but for the most part, if a game is marketed with either Xbox or PlayStation, for the most part, they try to make the game the best version possible on that piece of hardware. Like that is literally the case, right? Remember The Witcher 3? The Witcher 3 was heavily marketed with Xbox, but the better version was on PlayStation. That's how the industry is. And that just goes into the whole, Call of Duty will be worse if it's like owned by, Microsoft. And then Sony, Jim Ryan said that they won't share PlayStation 6 details with Activision if this deal goes through. And I have to say that is the most cowardice thing probably said this past week, because they are basically going to deny their fan base next gen versions of Call of Duty down the line, which is crazy if you think about it. Logan, that's probably one of the most crazy things said this week, denying their own user base a next gen version of COD.
That's bat crap insane. Like, honestly, like, suggest that, alright, fine. You say Call of Duty is so essential and so important that your company couldn't thrive or survive, or, oh, we're worried about quality control, or, oh, the experience wouldn't be different. But yet you would have the balls and the audacity to say, we're not going to give you a dev kit for it because it's just, you're owned by Microsoft. It's just not right. But then we expect it to be all this other stuff. I'm like, how can they bloody optimize it for your platform if you don't let them actually work on your platform? That makes no sense. That's insanity. I mean, like, have fun with cloud version, Jimmy. I mean, I have no idea what. It's just insane.
Like, imagine it gets to 2028 and the next gen consoles are around the corner. People are super hyped for like new shiny tech, and you have the last gen version being the only thing available on the PlayStation 6. People will blame Microsoft, but it's Sony holding back the dev kits. And turns out that's why we have no next gen version of Minecraft. So when we saw that fancy ray tracing in all like the tech demos for the Xbox Series X, well, this explains it, right? The fact that the consoles were around the corner and Mojang didn't have any access to dev kits. Mind blown. And it's just very silly. Like, all this stuff is just turned into an unnecessary circus because a year ago Jim Ryan was saying publicly that it would be the end of PlayStation, and now he's saying they'll be fine. Like he was like shrugging it off, and like you were saying before the show, Logan, it doesn't make any sense why Jim Ryan's saying anything because he's making the situation look good for Microsoft, basically. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the dude is comically good at putting his foot in his mouth. Like, there are some people that have a gift of public speaking and know what to say, when to say, and how to say it. And then there are folks who should strictly be in the back room and handling business deals and numbers. And it's just clear from various quotes over the years and this court case in particular that when Jim is front and center, it generally does not go the way they really hope it goes. From a dialogue perspective, it really hurt their own case. To his credit, he was honest and was like, "Yeah, Cloud is a separate. Cloud is so nascent. No one knows what it's going to be like. It would be difficult to project it, and basically, we're not worried about Cloud or." Starfield being exclusive, yeah, I didn't like it, but it's not anti-competitive. I wish they wouldn't have done it. But, Jim is bloodthirsty ruthless about these exclusives himself, so of course he understands. It's not anti-competitive, it's just what they do. So, on one hand there's that, but then there's the whole, tap shoes dancing Ryan thing that was on full display today.
Yeah, I mean, we all know why these exclusives happen. Like, these consoles have to have something intriguing and, like, a draw to the console and the platform. And Jim Ryan knows that. Like, he can't say, like, if the shoe was on the other foot, would Starfield be all of a sudden, like, multi-platform? No, we all know. Like,
No.
No. We'd see banners everywhere already. They'd fit the PlayStation logo in the, like, the Starfield circle. But, like, we all know this. And, like, Logan, when's this whole thing meant to end?
Well, so tomorrow they still have a few witnesses. They have a Nintendo exec who I'm going to assume is going to really help Microsoft's case and not help the FTC's case. You're going to have Bobby Kotick himself going to show up, and he's going to have a little chat. And so is Satya Nadella, the big man on campus. So there are some very, very high-profile people tomorrow. And then closing arguments Thursday. And then the judge, she will take time, sit back and think about everything and then give her decision within a brief amount of time. And it will either be, okay, worst case scenario, I grant this preliminary injunction. And then the FTC's like, yay, we gotta stop. And then Microsoft's like, well, this sucks. And then they have to either decide, okay, we renegotiate the deal extension with ABK, or we truly walk away. Or, best case, which I think is where it's trending right now, fingers crossed, knock on wood, all that she says, you know what? This case was a colossal waste of my time, and it's clearly not an immediate and overwhelming danger to the public or to business or to competition or to consumers. Preliminary injunction denied, and then she will give you may close this transaction after 5 days, 7 days. She'll give a brief amount of time, and then boom, it's done with that part.
So we're actually getting close to the finish line because, like, the juicy stuff this past week's been cool, but I think everyone just wants it to be done, like, over and done with.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead. I was just gonna say we still have y'all across the pond to deal with, but in the U.S.,
yeah. I mean, our regulation authorities over here, they don't know what they're talking about. Everyone knows it's corrupt. Like, anyone that has like a market leader position in the UK are basically protected, right? We have a thing in the UK we call Apple tax, where we get charged more for Apple devices just because, right? Right. So if an iPhone is, let's say, $1,000, and even though the pound is technically stronger, we will pay something like £1,200 because they can just do that. And the same thing will happen with PlayStation. But that stuff will all get sorted out. But it's good to know that all this stuff with the FTC is finally closing down. And one of the big things that came out of this is that Indiana Jones by Machine Games is full on Xbox exclusive. It was originally going to be a multi-platform game, but when Microsoft purchased Bethesda, they reworked the deal, and yeah, it's exclusive. Now, the uproar for this game was amazing because all of a sudden people were caring about this game that have never talked about it. And Machine Games is one of my favorite developers. I love their Wolfenstein games. Like, those are such fun first-person shooters. And I've seen a lot of people this past week say that Microsoft can't have a licensed intellectual property exclusive to their platform. And I have to ask what they've been smoking, because Spider-Man is owned by Marvel, right? Not Sony. Spider-Man is owned by Marvel, yet Spider-Man's exclusive to PlayStation. Knights of the Old Republic, Lucasfilm, is meant to be exclusive to PlayStation, but Indiana Jones can't be exclusive. Am I missing something here?
No, it's just the Sony Kool-Aid mentality of, like, I want what's mine and I want what's yours and I want everything to be mine, and if you can't have the best of anything, you can have what's left over. And only then under certain circumstances. It's tyrannical mentality. It's insane. And Phil was very crafty and clever with how he phrased it, about how basically Indiana Jones is owned by Lucasfilm, which is owned by Disney. Spider-Man, Marvel, owned by Disney. And he said they made Spider-Man one of their biggest platform sellers, and it's exclusive to them. So we decided we needed a Disney property of our own to have exclusive for our platform to help compete with that. So this was their Spider-Man answer. So at the end of the day, you can't get mad about that. That's literally competing. That's okay. I see you have this one. I'll raise you this one. So it was a direct answer. It wasn't like, you know what? We just bought this company. I'm not feeling Sony. We're just gonna make Indiana exclusive. Just heck with them. It was to compete directly and to answer the Spider-Man conundrum. If Spider-Man was multi-plat, I don't think Indiana Jones would have been exclusive. I think it would have been multi-plat.
Yeah, and it turns out Pete Hines said that anytime anyone's heard about this game, they say it's like amazing. So we don't know what this game's going to be. It could be first person because, it's Machine Games. That's what they do. It could be a third person action adventure game. We literally have no idea. It could be a match 3 duel game. It won't be, but you never know.
That would be fun.
Yeah, it would be funny, but like we don't know what it'll be. Could be, Indiana Jones kart racer, which would be pretty fun. But at the end of the day, we don't know what it's going to be. I don't think we're going to see that game till next year, because they finished the last Wolfenstein game ages ago, so that game's been in development for a while. I still believe, by the way, Wolfenstein 3 is going to be a thing. I'm mainly hoping for this, but Wolfenstein 3 has been a long time coming, especially the way that the last one ended. And when I say the last one, I mean the new Colossus, not that shared world co-op game. But yeah, a lot of cool, crazy stuff has been happening. And before we close out the show, we need to talk about Starfield. Now, just after last week's podcast, we heard about how much life there is in Starfield. As we know, there's about 1,000 planets you can visit, over 100 star systems. So it kind of works out on how a lot of planets are in real life. A lot of planets that we've, a lot of stars that we know of, that we've used with telescopes, a lot of planets. I can't speak today. A lot of stars tend to have 8 to 10 planets, right? And we've been told that 10% of those planets have life. Now, I was actually shocked, Logan, by how many people needed to be told 10% of 1,000. Like the way some people were acting.
Good job, education system.
Yeah, I face palmed so hard because the amount of people that replied to me saying, "Hey, 10% of 1,000 is 100," and all I can think is, and like why did people need to be told that? And some people seem surprised. Some people were acting like it was 10. Like, go to school. Like you learn these things when you're primary school. Like, bloody hell. But like 10% of planets in Starfield will have life, and that kind of makes sense. You know, it is meant to be a more realistic take on sci-fi. So we around star systems we have the Goldilocks zone. That's where water doesn't freeze or turn to gas, right? So in our solar system you have Mars and Earth, although Mars is messed up for a bunch of other reasons. But like in this game, you're gonna have moons you can visit. There's gas giants with moons. You're not gonna be landing on the planet, and 100 planets with life. That's actually a lot. Like most people that are complaining that are going to play the game aren't going to visit 100 planets. They're just making a fuss out of nothing. And then you have the planets that don't have life, but there's also going to be things like enemy bases, camps, bandit hideouts, cities, towns, mining colonies. But people are making it seem like, oh, there's going to be 900 empty worlds with nothing to do, and it's just about collecting material. And again, I facepalm because it's just stupid. Like, Logan, when you heard that 100 planets in this game are going to have life on them, did you really have any disappointment at all?
No. I mean, frankly, 100 is a ton. Like especially if it's like a Bethesda type crafted like worlds, like or even if they're smaller scale, like encounters, like 100 places with teeming life and organisms and things going on is awesome. And like you said, it's just frankly realistic and more enhancement to the science elements of it, and that they actually did their research when talking to NASA and SpaceX and others. That, like the Goldilocks zone, for example, or, like this planet might technically support life, but it's only like a little bit of bacteria or water, or this in this galaxy. Like, there are hardly any truly life supporting planets out there. Most of them are you'd fry to death, you'd freeze to death, it's a gas giant, or it's just a vacuum of space rock. They're like the vast majority, like I would say well over 90% probably, are like inhospitable. It's just, it makes sense that they would do it based on reality and trying to make it more fanciful though. So the fact that you have 1,000 places you can explore and 100 of them are going to be teeming with life, that's incredible, frankly. And the fact that you're still going to be able to go to those other places, and he didn't say this, but it wouldn't surprise me if there's like asteroid camps or like satellites or random encounter type stuff like that, or you can still do things on these places even if they don't have life. It's people raising a fuss about nothing simply because there is the scary Xbox logo on it and it's not multi-platform. Simple as that. That's why everybody's all butthurt about it.
Yeah, I mean, if people are interested in astronomy as much as me, there's an American astronomer, may he rest in peace, called Carl Sagan. Absolutely amazing work. Tons of his videos on YouTube, but he worked out a while ago that, let's say in real life, there could be anywhere between 10 and a million intelligent life form habitable planets in the Milky Way, right? So in between 10 and a million. And this game has 100 planets where there's life, right? So like they're going for something a bit realistic. and I have no problem with it. It's going to be a big game, and again, you're going to have these few people that will try and explore every single place in the game, right? There's probably going to be
Yeah, I'm a psycho.
yeah, yeah. There's probably going to be an achievement linked to it where you visit all 1,000 worlds or moons, and people are going to have fun with it. But like the people complaining aren't going to visit all 100 worlds with life and then just complain on Twitter. Although it is Twitter, so people will complain. But yeah, people are gonna have fun with it. It's gonna be a good game. It's a Bethesda RPG. You know what you're getting. Logan, have you got anything else to cover before we go over the show?
No, just keep your head on a swivel. This case is wrapping up, and fingers crossed. It's looking pretty good for the green team right now. Still got 2 days left, but so far so good.
Yeah, it's looking good. And the funny thing is, whenever I say, "Oh, the Activision Blizzard thing's almost done," people always reply saying, "Okay, what's the next acquisition?" And all I can think is like, "Please no!" like, if they go after a bunch of developers, like off the bat, like I think they'll be fine. But the second they go for another publisher, we're gonna have to have months and months of this again. And I can't be bothered. But I mean, hell, if they are actually looking at a Sega. By the way, I don't even know how that process would work. Sega is a Japanese company, so would the FTC have to get involved in that again?
I think it would just be the party, like, not entirely sure on foreign ones so much, but I think it's basically in the domiciles where they have, business offices and stuff like that. And I think, Sega obviously has American offices and stuff. So I think they might be involved in that one, but the vast majority of it, their headquarters are in Japan and stuff. And you saw the Japanese Trade Commission basically approved it. They just saw it and was like, okay, cool, scribbled a check and it was done. And they've raised an issue about Sony's practices in Japan and basically screwing over Xbox royally over there. So I think honestly, if they go after a publisher, they would really go after a Japanese one or another foreign one that is primarily domiciled outside of the US. So they don't, and the UK probably at this point. So they don't have to deal with this nonsense. Or wait a few years and see if new administrations come into place with different mindsets on things, because I really don't think they want to deal with this kind of crap again.
Oh, well, hopefully all this stuff will come to an end soon, but like you're saying, it could take a while with other things. But that huge list of developers, they could pretty much go for anyone at this point. It just depends whether they want to be bought, and with their money, who's really going to say no? Anyway, that's it for today's show. Everyone in chat has been awesome once again. No porn bots for like the past 12 episodes, so I think that's like a world record or something. But again, we'll be back at the same time next week. And I have a video dropping Thursday, which I was meant to put out last week. And oh, by the way, there's a lot of people that make Starfield and Xbox content that's being hit by a very particular company in Colombia, hitting people with false copyright claims. Hopefully Microsoft can sort that out. But yeah, anyway, we'll be back the same time next week. Again, I have a video coming out on Thursday, and I think a lot of people are going to enjoy it. Anyway, we'll be back. We are out. Peace, everybody.